Welcome, everybody. While we still have some people joining, feel free, add to the chat. How long have you been in your current role? What do you want to learn or hear about today? And what's your skill that you're great at? What's your superpower? I'd love to hear how everyone's excelling. So please share that in the chat or come off mute, share that when we get to the questions and answers at the end as well. So our agenda today, we'll do a welcome. We'll touch on our shared purpose again. Amy did a great job, but I want to reinforce it. I'll discuss the career challenge that I've seen with BRMs and working with BRMs. I'll talk about some of the solution that I've put together to help BRMs and my team members. We'll actually go into those tools. We'll talk about each tool, and then we'll have a move to action, and we'll wrap up, and we'll also have time for QA at the end. So starting off, who am I? I'm Michael Quinn, BRMP and PMP. I'm a senior IT manager at the City of Austin in the Austin Technology Services Department, so Central IT. And I lead the Business Relationship Management and Enterprise Applications Division. So my division roughly breaks out into, I have BRMs, and then I have Enterprise Applications. So that's the city's case management tool, the Enterprise Asset Management tools, and ServiceNow. And I'm also the ServiceNow product owner for the city. I've been at the City of Austin for 19 years. I've had a variety of roles from frontline desktop support to project manager to product owner to senior manager, even doing some enterprise architecture on the side. And for the last 5 years, I've had the privilege of leading our BRM team as part of the Central Technology Management Department. My focus is really around empathetic and relationship-focused leadership. So when this job was posted, it really aligned with what I was trying to accomplish and the types of things I wanted to work on and the people I wanted to work with. For today, just know the things that I'm going to talk about, they are my tips, but they're not the only tips out there. I've talked with a lot of great BRMs. There's great BRM programs and mentors available. So please do reach out, use the BRM Institute, use your network, collect tips from as many people as you can so you find what works best for you. Just a reminder about our shared purpose, like Amy had mentioned, shared purpose for the BRM Institute. We want to improve ourselves, our organizations, and our world by connecting relationships to results. So if you're here today, if you're improving yourself, if you're enhancing your skill set, you're not only helping yourself, you're helping your organization, you're helping the world. So thank you. We will have places throughout today's presentation where I might ask for feedback. So don't feel like you have to wait to the very end. When I ask for feedback, jump in, come off mute, add things to the chat. I want to hear from you. So let's talk about the career challenge. What are some of the BRM career challenges I've heard? I've heard these items from my BRM team members. I've heard this from people who want to become BRMs, and I've heard this from other BRMs I've talked with across the world. For the first one, how do I become a BRM? Not everybody on this call might be in a BRM role. How do I advance to the next level of BRM? I'm already in a BRM role. How do I take that next step? How do I become a senior BRM or a master BRM? How do I get executives to recognize the work I do? How do I transition from a BRM to an executive or vice versa? Sometimes we're moving into an executive role, and sometimes we're coming from an executive role to being a BRM. What skills do I work on to become a better BRM? My manager or executive doesn't support my development. What do I do now? And when do I know I'm ready for the next step in my career? These are some of the questions I've been asked. And so my question to the group is, who's felt this way while working? Who here has faced some of these challenges? Feel free, add it to the chat, give me a thumbs up, a high five, or come off mute, share your challenge. Yeah, Jamie agrees. Anyone else? All right. Well, if you've had these challenges, even if you don't want to share with us, hopefully this webinar will give you some tools, some information that can help you overcome these challenges. What is the solution that I came up with? And this is for myself and for my team at the City of Austin. Well, starting out, I really want to emphasize that as an individual, you have a lot more control over your career than you may realize. There's a lot of overlap in skills and knowledge between jobs that employees often don't see. Additionally, a lot of employees might lack information or lack a tool on how to assess their skill level. So how good do I need to be at a certain skill to do this job? I've also found that the skills that make you successful as an individual aren't the same skills as a supervisor or an executive. So there's whole new skill sets that you're going to have to pick up and learn as you progress. Often employees overestimate the education needed for a job, and many employees miss opportunities for experiences to get ready for the next job in their current role. So these are some of the challenges that I've seen, and I'm curious what the group thinks about these solution statements. Anything here that jumps out to you anything in what I've just described that sounds crazy to you, maybe. No crazy comments. No one saying I'm crazy here. Okay, I'll take that for now. Thank you, Tara. So based on that career challenge and my initial solution statement, these are some concepts that I've put together to help advance my career, as well as to help advance BRM careers for my team members that I've worked with. And I do want to give a shout out to the City of Austin's BRM team. I do have a great team that I work with. I have actually had total team turnover about 3 times in the last 5 years. And that's BRMs who are promoting to becoming managers, senior managers, or executives. I've even had a BRM leave to become the director of BRM at a private organization. So shout out to the City of Austin. Really talented team members there. They're all high performers, A+ students. So some of the concepts I've used. Uh, I've tried to focus on identifying the overlap of skill and knowledges between jobs. So which skills are transferable? And we're going to talk about each of these solutions in a minute. I created a competency scale to help myself and team members estimate the skill level needed for a particular job. I talk with team members a lot about the abstraction of work. We focus on continuous learning and certifications to fill gaps. And then we talk about how do we expand your role to the edge? How do we take your role to the maximum and then start to branch out beyond your current role? I do want to emphasize a lot of these tools are here to help you take ownership of your career and development. You can take one, you can take them all, you can take none of them today. Again, it's your toolbox. I want you to do what's going to be best for you. So let's talk about some of those tools. So I have 5 tools that I put together, and we'll talk about each of these: skills and responsibilities, competency scales, the abstraction of work, continuous learning, and then expanding your role. And I'll say it one more time, please mix and match the tools to fit your needs. So the first one is around skills and responsibilities. As I've looked at BRM job postings, as I've looked at other job postings, both at the City of Austin, in the private sector, and from other BRM organizations, what I've identified is that there's multiple skills that get shared between different jobs. And that's not between BRM to BRM, that's between entirely different job families and BRM. And that's because there's a set of universal skills that apply to most jobs. Now, when I work with employees, when I coach, and I coach about 20 to 40 employees at any given moment at the City of Austin, a lot of the employees I work with, they overlook the universal skills and they really hone in on the position specific skills, the hard skills of that job. Now, the challenge with that, especially in the context of a BRM, is that a lot of BRM skills, you're going to learn and practice them in other jobs before you become a BRM. I am a strong believer that BRM skills are necessary for executive success. I love it when I hear an executive has an understanding of BRM or maybe has worked in a BRM-like role, because it likely means that they understand the value of relationships. I encourage team members to review job descriptions. We work together, identify similar skills, and then we identify similar skills again. I added it twice, oops. And finally, if you're weak in a skill that overlaps with other jobs, that's an area to focus on. That universal skill gets used in multiple places. So if you're weak there, you're weak in many places or many roles. So my question back to the group, raise your hand for this, add it to the chat. Who here has looked at a position that's been posted and automatically assumed you weren't qualified? I'll put my hand up. I felt like that. Yeah, a few people, thumbs up. I'm going to try to encourage you, if you see a position and you think you're not qualified for it, I would really encourage you to think about applying for it anyways. They've done studies on this. The people who feel that they're qualified tends to break out based on gender role. For men, if you have about, typically, if a man has about 50% of what the job is looking for, they apply. For women, the studies have shown that that number is much higher. It's about 95%. So most women applicants feel they need to have 95% of what's being requested before they apply. So if you're a woman joining us today, just know you might be competing against a lot of men who have only half of the requirements. So please do think about applying. The worst thing that happens is they say no. So I'm going to show an example of some overlapping skills between different job families. Most of our organizations, you may have a role like a business systems analyst. This is a technical role. They may focus on writing reports, doing research. Maybe they write statements of work or create use cases. They might be doing some testing or importing data for your organization. On the right side, we have our business relationship manager, and these are all the core BRM skills that you need of measuring a relationship, negotiating services, managing demands. If you've gone through the BRMP or the BRM fundamentals course, you've probably heard a lot about this and about these skills. Now, when I look at both of these roles, what I can identify is there's a set of shared skills between both of them. Both these roles are going to gather requirements. Both lead meetings, facilitate workshops. They might present to executives. They hold crucial conversations. They document processes. They advance team culture. They identify opportunities. And there's an even more that you could add to this list that both of these roles need. What this means, though, is if you're in a business systems analyst role and you would like to stretch to become a BRM, here's a set of skills that you're already working on. So you may not have all the BRM skills, but these shared skills that you're already building in your BSA capacity, they're preparing you to be a BRM. So if you're not in a BRM role currently and you're trying to figure out how do I get ready for that, you might already be doing it in your current role. You just need to acknowledge those universal skills. Likewise, we could talk about an executive, where an executive is going to focus on financial decisions, leading strategy development, negotiating with other executives, creating services. And we can see with a BRM that an executive has a lot of overlap as well. So this is another place. If you're a BRM looking to branch out and to become an executive, you want to become the CIO, the CTO, the CEO, the COO of your organization. Or if you're on the opposite end, you're an executive and you're now being asked to think about BRM, possibly to stand up a BRM organization or to operate like a BRM. There's a lot of shared responsibilities, shared skills between those jobs. So when it comes to how do you plan your career, I would encourage that we start with those universal skills. If we are good in those universal skills, it's going to help us in multiple roles, whether it's as a business analyst, a BRM, or an executive, or any other role you think about. Most every role in every org has to go to meetings. Every role has to work with people. So if you're good at those, it's really leveling you up across the board. Oh, and before I move on, any questions so far about skills, responsibilities, and the overlap? I'm not seeing anything to check. Let's talk about a competency scale. So when it comes to a competency scale, one thing I recognized is that the level of skill mastery you need advances or it increases as you advance your career. What this means is that normally higher level jobs require greater mastery of skills. I'm going from a BRM to a senior BRM. My skills are leveling up across the board. The competency needed increases. The challenge is, how do you describe your mastery of a skill? When you go into an interview or your performance review, how do you talk about where you're succeeding or not succeeding? Where are you strong and where are you weak? So I created this competency scale, and I'm going to show it to you in a second to help assess my skill and to help assess others' skill level. And my example is set up based on the City of Austin's interview grading scale. So at the City of Austin, we grade your interview answers. They're on a 5 to 10 point scale. So I set my competency scale up to mirror what the City of Austin looks for, because a lot of my coaching is to help city employees get better jobs at the City of Austin. Now, you can still use this even in another organization. I think it's broadly applicable, but just note that's the basis for what you're going to see in a minute. And this competency scale has been really helpful to request feedback, to start discussions with managers or with mentors. So based on the work you do with your competency scale, you can then take that to other people and start some action. It's really good to rate your skill on the competency scale and then compare it to your manager's rating. Where do you differ? Where does your manager think you're really strong and you think you're weak? Why the difference? And that lets us start to develop development plans based on those gaps. And like I said, this is really a jumping off point to start discussions, start some actions in your organization or for your role. This is my competency scale. We're going to start on the left side at the lowest level, no competency. You have no understanding of a skill. You're unfamiliar with it. If I were to say a term like RSOAP, does that sound foreign to you? You've never heard of an RSOAP? If so, you have no competency with that. That's not bad. That just means you don't know the term yet. And then as we start to progress, as we become a beginner with a skill, we're familiar with the basic concept. You could answer questions defining the skill or what the skill is. So when I come back to RSOAP, now you can say, oh, I know what an RSOAP is. That's a relationship strategy on a page. I've heard about that before. If you're advancing into that intermediate level, now you're starting to understand how to use or apply the skill, but you still require assistance from the team or the manager to do it. So I know what an RSOAP is. Maybe I've created one, but I need a lot of support from my team or my manager to complete that document. You may become advanced. So now you can apply the skill consistently to meet this need. Not only have you done it before, but because you have that historical experience that informs the present, it's going to let you refer back to what you did before. Oh, I've made 5 RSOAPs previously. Now I know how to make the next one. All the way up to that mastery level, that you can understand a skill thoroughly due to training and experience, and you can apply it multiple ways. You might even be able to teach people. So when we think about any individual skill, whether it's leading a meeting or presenting to executives or creating a relationship strategy on a page or doing a value analysis, this is a place for us to identify where do you fit on the scale? How comfortable are you with the skill? How familiar are you with it? How much have you used it? And where do you rank from none to master? Or in other words, if you want to simplify it even more, if I'm at that none level, I know nothing about it. At the beginner level, I'm learning about it, but need a lot of help. At intermediate, I'm doing the work and need some help. Advanced, I'm doing the work and need minimal help. And at the mastery level, I can teach and assess the skill. So here's what a sample competency assessment might look like. So I have a rater at the top that's a BRM, and they've gone through and they've listed a few skills. Maybe these are skills that they get measured on in their organization. So co-creating strategy, they don't have any skill with that. And they might be a beginner at developing roadmaps, and they feel they're a beginner at presenting to executives. They might think they're advanced at measuring the relationship or negotiating service, and they might be a master at gathering requirements. Well, once you've done a self-assessment, I do encourage you, if you are going to do a self-assessment, be honest with yourself. That means give yourself credit where credit is due. Also, be honest if you feel that you're not strong in a skill. Uh, the more honest you are when you assess your skill level, the better results you can get by having discussions about that level. And what we see at the manager level is that the manager might feel that you're an intermediate at that measuring relationship skill, but they might also think you're intermediate for presenting to executives. So we have two gaps there. The manager thinks you're more advanced than you do, than the BRM, and the manager thinks you're less advanced on measuring relationships than the BRM. So this is an opportunity to have more conversation. Why do we feel that way? Well, the last time you had to present to an executive, you really handled that mostly on your own. As a manager, I didn't have to step in or course correct much. Oh, so that's why you view me intermediate. But you don't view me as advanced because the last time we had to measure a relationship, as a manager, I had to step in, I had to intervene multiple times to get that on track. And you can also expand this out to peers. You might ask your peers, your coworkers, to assess your skill level. And the question I would have to this group is, how often do you talk to your coworkers, your peers, about your skill level in your organization? Feel free, add that to the chat, come off mute. Is it something that you do frequently? Is it something that you do never? You never think about asking that question to your coworkers. How good am I at my job? Not seeing anything in the chat right now, but if you have an answer later, feel free to add it. Chris Aarons from the city of Austin hasn't discussed it with coworkers, but may start. Love to hear that. We'll follow up on that one, Chris. So let's talk about the abstraction of work. This is a term I made up. It might be used somewhere else in the industry. There might be another term that you've heard of that applies here. But for me, the abstraction of work is really that the work you do changes based on your level in the organization. That means the skills needed at each level changes as your focus changes. And as a BRM, you're going to have to learn to change your focus as your role changes. You have to learn new skills. You might have to stop using certain skills as you move up, as you move around an organization. And importantly, the abstraction grows the higher in the chain you progress. As you abstract, or as you advance up the chain, you get further away from the day-to-day work. This also means that the things you talk about are going to change based where in the organization someone sits. As a BRM, you may be meeting with operational staff. Well, with operational staff, you're likely going to have very operational or tactical discussions, typically. Same thing applies as you talk higher in the chain of command with executives, you're likely going to have more strategic discussions, typically. I say typically here because there still is a lot of value in having a strategic discussion with a frontline employee, just as there's value in having an operational discussion with a CEO. But by and large, you're going to change your topic based on where that person sits in the organization. It's also really important to remember that because your skill level changes as you promote in an org, the Peter principle is something that may occur. So I don't know who here is familiar with the Peter principle. Feel free to put a hand up if you've heard of it before. But essentially it says people promote to their level of incompetence. So you get promoted, you've now reached a set of skills that you haven't used before, and now you can't be effective in your job. You're a really good division manager and you're not a not so great executive. You're a really good individual team member, and you're not so great as a supervisor. So please keep that in mind as you work across your organization. You might be running into people where their skills have not leveled up for the role that they need to be in. And that would be a great place for them to use a competency scale to figure out where they're deficient. A final thing here, just remember supervision doesn't equal leadership. So as you move up the organization, you might be talking to people with more supervisory responsibility. They may not be better leaders. It's really important to remember that as a business relationship manager, you should be a leader. Even if you don't have a team that reports to you, you have to lead in your individual capacity. And I will give a shout out to our City of Austin team. I have a team of great BRMs. Each of them I've challenged to step up to be leaders, even when they don't have formal power, and they've all risen to that challenge. So thank you to my City of Austin team. The question I would have to this group right now is, when you think about where you are in your organization as a BRM, where are you in the abstraction chain? And this might help if I show you the next slide, and then we'll come back to this question. So I'm going to show you a diagram to show the abstraction of IT. So we're going to be talking about IT roles here. And on my chart, I have vertically how much control of the work someone has. So if you're at the top of the y-axis, you have a lot of control. And then on the x-axis, we have your level in the organization. So as you move to the right, you're getting promoted. You're going up the chain of command. So what does this look like in the world of IT? Well, as an individual, you might have a team like desktop support. I used to lead the desktop support team for my department. And I could say that an individual on that team, they fix computers. Now, the challenge is often someone fixes computers and we go, you fix computers, let's promote you to lead the team. But as a supervisor, you no longer fix computers. You help team members fix computers. This is an entirely new set of skills that you're having to pick up. So what makes you good at fixing computers may not make you a good supervisor. You're getting further away from the work. So promoting from a supervisor to a division manager. You don't fix computers and you don't help the team members fix computers. I help the supervisor help team members fix computers. As an assistant director, I'm still getting further away from the work. I'm helping the division manager, help the supervisor, help team members fix computers. All the way up to a potential director or CIO or COO or CEO. Now a director is helping the assistant director, help the division manager, help the supervisor, help team members fix computers. As a director, as an executive, you are super far away from the work. At the City of Austin, our CIO talks more about the ethics of IT than actually fixing computer problems. It's really important to remember on the abstraction of work, who are you talking to and where should they be? If you're having meetings with director level positions and when you're talking about fixing computers, they're very deep into the work. They need to be abstracted out because they're likely not focusing at the right level. So as a BRM, that's one area that you want to help them make that adjustment. And the same thing as a BRM. If you're going to individuals, you're probably going to be talking about work that's done hands-on, front line. You're going to be talking about fixing computers. And then if you move up and you talk to the supervisor of that team, you should be talking about how to help team members fix computers. What are the problems, the challenges you face there? Additionally, each person at each level here, what they're seeing is they're going to be focused at different levels of verticality. So an individual is going to be very siloed, very focused on their work, head down, I'm just fixing computers. The supervisor looks a little bit more left and right. What's team member A and team member B doing? But that's usually what they're doing. They don't really look too far outside their team. And then a division manager looks more horizontally, all the way up to a director who looks very horizontally across an organization and might be thinking much more into the future. So as a BRM, as you think about your career, identify what level of verticality do you want when it comes to work? Do you want to be able to just focus on your work day to day and not have to worry about other people? Then you might be more interested in that individual level. If you want to look very horizontally, solving problems across an entire org, then you might be looking at more of that director level role. But that also means you're going to become very hands-off. A director has almost no ability to influence the day-to-day happenings in their organization. That might sound very scary to a director, but that's the truth. They rely on other people to get work done. So if you're not comfortable relying on other people, if that's a skill that you haven't developed, that's one that you would want to identify on your competency scale to level that up if you want to operate at that director level. So going back to my previous question, where does BRM fit in your org? Does anyone want to share? Is a BRM tiered at that division manager level? Are BRMs working at that assistant director or director level? Or is BRM down at that individual level, helping individuals with their problems? Sarah Knight, typically at the division manager in that org. Okay. I just joined the institute. I am at a director level. Oh, well, congratulations. So what Sarah's identified there is at the division manager level, those are going to be the types of problems that the BRM can help solve. This comes back to your BRM leadership as well. If your BRM leadership is saying you need to solve bigger problems, are you being paired with the right people to solve those problems? You can't solve enterprise problems if you only work with division managers. Assistant director, several assistant director levels. At the City of Austin, we typically want to partner at the director level. So thank you everybody for your input there. Let's talk about continuous learning. Super important. Take ownership of your learning. If you're here at today's webinar, congratulations. You're taking ownership of your learning. I want to stress that nobody arrives to a role fully formed. It's really important that team members take on an always learning mindset and make use of every opportunity to learn. There are going to be certain hard skills that are going to be easier to acquire than soft skills. So if we think back to those BRM skills, leading a meeting, that's typically not something that I hire an employee and I expect that I'm going to spend 2 years teaching them how to lead meetings. That's a soft skill. I want you to come in with that. The hard skill of how do you measure the relationship? How do you identify value leakage? Those are going to be places that I will teach you up on those skills in the first 6 months and working with the BRM Institute. I will say degrees are a significant investment of time and money. I've worked with people, they've gone back and got a master's degree in disaster planning and found out they don't like doing disasters planning and they feel stuck in their role. So I really like certifications as a way to really have focused skill development for a lot less cost. You're not spending 50,000, you might be spending maybe 1,000 or 2,000. And some really useful certifications, and this is not me having corporate synergy with BRMI, but I really do think the business relationship management professional, the certified business relationship manager are great certifications. I'm not saying that because I'm getting paid either. I'm saying that because they really help with the foundational skills, universal skills that you're going to see in every role. Everyone could benefit from being able to have better relationships or understanding relationships better or trying to work on relationships. And there's a few other certifications that may be applicable to your organization. A PMP may be helpful, especially if you operate in a projectized or a matrix project organization. If you are manufacturing, Six Sigma might be helpful there. So my question to the group, who here feels like they have management support to continuously develop, to continuously learn and grow in their role? Show of hands, I'll put my hand up. I feel I have a lot of support. Great. Vanessa, Rose. Okay, we're getting some hands up, hearts. That's great to hear. If you're part of an org that supports that continuous growth, congratulations. Not everyone's there. And if you're in an org that doesn't support that, you may have to take on more of that responsibility yourself. But remember, it's your learning. If you're not going to take the ownership of it, no one else will. The other thing I'll move on to is expanding the role to the edge. What I mean by that is the prep for the next role starts in your current role. It's super important that you maximize your job responsibilities so you can stretch at the edge. So if you're not a BRM, we want you to start doing some BRM work before you become a BRM. If you're a BRM and you want to be a senior BRM, you're going to have to start doing some senior BRM work before someone says you're qualified. And if you're trying to become an executive, then you're going to have to start thinking like an executive and doing executive work in your current BRM role. I don't know how it is in other organizations, but at the City of Austin, supervisors, they're inclined to give opportunities to employees already succeeding. So if you're having difficulty in your current role and you want to take that next step, you may find it's very hard for your manager to say, yes, I'm going to give you opportunity because they might feel you're not succeeding. I work with a lot of employees to identify projects or temporary assignments and to volunteer for them. We observe our organization's pain points. And one thing I will say, and this is true at the City of Austin, I don't know how it is other places, there is an unlimited amount of IT, process, and business improvement projects in every organization. So when I talk to people and they say, I don't have anything to do, I don't have any special projects that I could work on, That seems to be a hard argument for me to believe because there is always ways that we can make things better in our org. And if you're trying to expand your role or you want to get more training, this is a place we want to make the argument to leadership how learning the new skill improves the current team. If you've gone through some of our BRM training, you've probably heard of terms like value or impact. What's the value that a new technology or service brings to the organization? But also, what's the value a person brings to the organization? Are you bringing more value? And if we want to get more special assignments, we want to get more training, we have to make a value argument. If your organization's investing in you, that's improving your ability to do work. We want you to make that argument. As opposed to saying, I just want to go to this training, I need to go to this conference, but you can't articulate the value. If you're having value-based conversations with your leadership, you're likely moving in the right direction. So question back to the team here, who feels comfortable being proactive in your organization? Do you operate in a culture where you can speak up and say, I see an opportunity? Yep. All right, Vanessa, give me a thumbs up. Getting a few more. If you don't feel you're in a culture that supports you being proactive, then that can be a very difficult or stifling organization to be part of. Maybe that's not the right fit for you, or maybe we need to have some larger conversations about how we change culture. Remember, as BRMs, you are culture setters in many ways. So here's an example of taking a job and trying to stretch the responsibilities towards BRM. If we go back to that original example of that business analyst, we see the business analyst skills, we see those shared universal skills with the BRM, and then now we see the BRM skills that are outside that role. So if this person, this business analyst, is succeeding at everything in the first two columns, now it's time to start stretching towards that third column. How do we get some experience measuring the relationship, negotiating services? And if you're doing some of that work in your BSA role, you're making your team better, but you're also preparing for that next role as a BRM. Likewise, we went to that executive example. You're an executive and now you're moving into a BRM role or you're taking on BRM responsibilities. That's a place as an executive. How do we start stretching to those BRM spaces, co-creating strategy, connecting with new stakeholders? That's the place that BRMs really thrive. And that's also a place that the executive may not be building that skill set if they just stay in their executive lane. Or if you happen to be a BRM and you do want to become an executive, you want to stretch the opposite direction. So we're doing great in our first or our right two columns. Now we need to identify some of that executive work, the financial decisions, leading strategic development, negotiating with other execs, reviewing business cases. How do we get that exposure or that experience? That's what we want to start looking for as we become successful as a BRM. And of course, you could also build this for BRM to senior BRM or BRM to BRM director or manager of the BRM team. This can be applied to any role so long as you can find success in your current role and we can start identifying the new skills that you want to work on, the new experience you want to gain from the at the edge. So our move to action. This is all nice and all, but what I do now. So I recommend you take a look at this list, identify one item to work on here. Review the skills and responsibilities you do today. Is there anything you can add? I know we're all maxed out on work, but are there certain skills that you aren't using? And could we incorporate those skills into the work or the assignments you already have? If you're not measuring value today, you might want to think about adding in value measurement to your day-to-day work. There's a real quick estimating exercise I ask team members to do whenever a problem comes into the team. I ask them to tell me how often does that problem happen and how much does it cost when that problem occurs. This problem happens once a year and it takes about 5 minutes of work to fix it. Great, that's a small problem. We don't need to work on it. Just doing that quick estimating exercise helps my team figure out what are the big problems to work on. This problem happens every day and it costs us an hour. We probably need to take a look at it. This problem happens once a year and it costs $5 million. We probably want to take a look at it. So that's another place we're inserting a skill into our day-to-day work. Pick a skill, assess your level with that skill. How comfortable are you with measuring a relationship? Do you need a lot of team support to do that? Can you do that independently? Assess your level, talk to others about your assessment. I encourage you, meet with your manager, volunteer for a project. Be proactive, identify a solution. If you are going to try to be proactive, I encourage you to think of that in 1 hour blocks of time. There is the 1-page, 1-hour pledge that you can look up after this session today. It essentially says, we want to work on something for no more than 1 page or 1 hour before we start sharing it and getting feedback. If you're being proactive, if you've only spent an hour doing the work, that's probably not going to be a big deal to your manager in most places. If you spent 45 hours working on something or 200 hours working on it without telling your manager, that might be a different conversation. But 1 hour identifying a problem, maybe putting together a 1-page summary, that's a way to really kick off that discussion and possibly getting approval to do more work. Please do connect with a mentor. If you don't have a mentor, BRM Institute, especially the communities online, are great. I'll say that several of my City of Austin BRMs help lead communities for the BRM Institute. It's a great way to meet people. It's a great opportunity to connect with other BRMs and possibly to find a mentor. And if you can't find a mentor, I would say reach out to me and we'll see what we can do together, or possibly connecting you with someone else in the industry. Take a look at the BRM certification programs. If you don't have your BRMP, you don't have your CBRM, I highly encourage you to think about both of those certifications. Really great skills that are universal. If you're not a member of the BRM Institute, I don't know how you got here, but please think about joining and try to start online discussions with other BRMs. We're all remote, we're across the world, so sometimes an online discussion is going to be the best way to kick off those topics. If you're doing something great at your organization, try to share it. And if you have a problem in your org, definitely share that. Other BRM programs are facing the same problems. I encourage you to not forget, leaders are here to support you. And when I say leader, I mean leaders inside your org. I mean leaders in the BRM industry. I mean leaders in your day-to-day life. Make use of the leaders you know. Make use of that network. That's why we're here, to support each other. And to wrap up, so we'll have time for questions. Please reach out, contact me. My email's here. Reach out on LinkedIn. And then if you reach out to me at email, I can always schedule a meeting with you. This is the best part of my job, is talking with groups like this. So I want to meet with you. I want to hear your questions and your feedback. And please give a shout out to Amy, Mariah, and the BRM Institute for setting up this webinar. So thank you, team. So with that, I'll turn things back over to Amy and the group for questions.
Okay, thank you so much, Michael. We do have about 10 minutes left. Is there any questions? Does anybody want to come off mute and ask a question? We would love to take that time with you guys. I don't know if we will be doing any Austin, Houston in-person meetups soon, but we are looking at doing something with the Choctaw Nation up in Durant, Oklahoma, which is a little bit of a drive, but it's just literally right on the other side of the Texas-Oklahoma border. So be looking for that if you are in the Texas Triangle area. That will be coming later this summer. Any questions? Tara.
Hi. Yeah, so is it going to be included on how I could schedule like a personal session with Mr. Quinn? I know that he mentioned that, and I mean, I know everybody's schedule is really crazy, so but I would like to do like more of a deeper dive and try to get a better understanding of you know, pretty much some of the way that he phrased things, you know, was kind of new to me, and it's really interesting to me. So whatever's available, I'd like to just have more information on that.
That sounds great. Send me an email. I'll reply back with my bookings link. It shows all my availability and helps schedule a meeting automatically.
Okay. Can I throw it in the chat?
It's on the screen, Tara, if you want to just grab it from there. And then if you reach out to him via email, yeah, he'll be able to get to that bookings link with him.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you.